All right, all right. Hello, ladies. Hello, anyone who's listening to the replay. Welcome to the Homeownership Made Easy first time buyer webinar. We are going to go over um, the basics of knowledge in what you need to know in order to make a decision if your time is now or if your time is coming. All right. Questions, of course, you can drop them in the chat, but I will definitely be leaving some time at the end for you to raise your hand and ask any questions that you may have. All right. So let's get started. So first, I want to say welcome to everyone who has taken the time on this snowy and cold evening to join me for to join me and to listen to my little passion project. If you've known me, I've been in the industry for quite some time, and I just have a special love for first-time buyers and making sure that they have the appropriate information to help them start their journey, because home ownership is something that I know from personal experience that can change a trajectory of your family's financial future. So welcome, and please let me know in the chat where you're chiming in from. I do see some unfamiliar names, so I would love to know where you found me. But yeah, drop in the chat. Let me know where you're chiming in from. I am in Mississauga in the Greater Toronto area, but I know my network expands all the way across the country. So I'd love to know where you're chiming in from. All right, and I love to start with a quote because again, I'm very passionate about real estate. Um, the most wealthiest people in the world have based their wealth on the power of real estate. They all have real estate in their portfolio. And so I found this quote that I was like, yeah, this is exactly how I feel. I didn't say it, and this man is from the 1800s, but I could have very well said it. Real estate is an imperishable asset, ever increasing in value. It is the most solid security that a human in genuinely has ever devised. Like brilliance, all right? When you think about real estate and how it can change your life, change your family's life for generations to come. I tell you, this man is from the 1800s, I think early 1900s, and real estate is still running the world. So thank you for being here. Today, we are going to talk about home ownership made easy. And I know most of you are thinking, what is easy about home ownership? And so because I've been in the industry for so long, I understand that when you have the right information and you have the right team to support you along the process, what may seem hard will become easy. It's only hard if you don't know what to do or if you're doing the wrong thing. So it is my mission to equip you with not only the key information, but to provide the ease in the easy as you move towards a significant milestone. So I'm excited that you are here with me. I'm excited that you're giving me the opportunity to even plant this seed along this journey, because homeownership is something that doesn't have to be a dream. It can truly become a tangible reality, and it starts right now. So a little bit about me for those who don't know me. I am a mom of one. He's 11 years old, and every time he hears me give my intro and I don't say mom, he's like, "But you didn't say mom." So I'm saying it even though he's not in the room. Um, my son, yeah, we'll get back to that. Mortgage broker for over 20 years, and what I do call legacy coach. I help women their finances so that they can understand that how they manage and master their money and become a good steward, it could truly help them to create the legacy that they intend for their families. And so I became a real estate investor at the tender age of 23. And that was simply because I had made a decision to make a difference for me and for my family. My family back then was my mom and my siblings. I'm the eldest of three children, and my mom had me very young. So I essentially grew up with her, and I witnessed her challenges, her struggles, how difficult it was for her to manage her household, but also take care of herself, right? She is from the old school thinking where you just got to work, you go to school, or you go to school, you get a good job, and then you work until you can live off your pension. But if anybody has been paying attention to our economy for the last, I don't know, 25 years, we know that that strategy isn't going to work for anybody anymore. We have to think outside of the box. We have to do things a little bit different and maybe even more intentionally and aggressively because we don't have the economy to support us. We have to create our own economy. And so when I purchased my property at the age of 23, that was again a blind choice that I had made without any knowledge or any background education on the industry. But it was a couple years later when my realtor kept coming and knocking my door and asking me if I wanted to sell. I'm like, lady, you just sold me this. Like, what am I doing? What would I be doing selling this property? But she also expressed to me that my property that I had purchased for $100,000 had now appreciated 20,000. The following year, it was 30,000. Until the fourth year, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to sell because I want to roll that excess into another property. And that's what I did. So as I said, real estate has truly taught me not only about the industry, but it's taught me about managing my money. It's taught me how to teach others to do the same. Shortly after I had purchased and entered into the industry, my mom was able to build enough confidence to buy her own property, which is something that I knew she had never thought she could do. And so I'm so passionate about educating specifically moms. I do help the greater community, but I'm so passionate about helping moms because I know how it changed my mom's life. And now I have a son and I have to make sure that I'm doing what I can to make sure it changes his life too. So again, thank you for being here. So what do I do as a mortgage broker? Many people don't fully understand what we do as a mortgage broker. They understand the traditional way of mortgage lending. Go to the bank, right? You go to the bank, they handle all your paychecks, they handle all your savings, they handle your investments. And if they want, they'll give you a mortgage. I've had so many clients that have been banking with some of the major institutions, and when they were ready to purchase a property, the bank who they banked with, the bank who collects their pay every 2 weeks, said, no, you don't qualify for a mortgage. And so when you're working with me, mortgage broker, I'm independent, I'm standalone. I don't work for any one institution. I have access to a wide range of lenders, and that gives you a better opportunity to access a loan or a mortgage or a product that is suitable for you and where you're at, right? Because a mortgage, of course, is not a one size fit all. Everybody has a different story. Yes, you got to be working. Yes, you got to have some money to invest, but life is lifing at all given times. And so when you go to a bank, they have a very, very strict lending guideline. And if you don't fit within those walls, they're not able to help you. And so as working with myself, as I said, you have access to different options, but I also work with you at different stages in your journey. I can guarantee you can go to your bank, and if you don't have any savings, if your credit needs some work on, they're going to say, come back to us when you're ready. They're not going to say, okay, let's go through your credit bureau and figure out. They don't do those things. They're focused on closing transactions today. Okay. Another advantage, as I mentioned, like I work with you based on where you're at, right? A bank is focused on selling their products. I'm a single mom. Sorry, let me read that. I'm a single mom and I'm going to change her. Come on now. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Rochelle. Thank you for being, oops.
Thank you.
It starts with a decision. Congratulations on making that decision.
Thanks so
Right?
much. Yeah.
You're welcome. So again, like my goal is to help you with the knowledge, help you with the access, help you with the resources, which we'll cover some tonight to help you make that decision. And once you make the decision, then we can create a plan to move you forward. The bank won't do that for you. This is just a visual for you to see in terms of options. Like when you go to the supermarket and you see, the shelves, you've got 400 different types of bread versus, if you go to the bakery, they just have baked goods. Well, this is kind of how it is when you look at the bank versus a mortgage broker. This is just a snapshot of all of the different lenders that I have access to because there's definitely not enough space to fit them all. But when you go to the bank, when you go to the blue bank, the red bank, the green bank, they can only offer you what they offer you. They can't say to me or say to you, sorry, well, First National also has this product, so we can offer, no, they can't do that. They can only offer you what that particular institution offers you. But what I can do is I take your whole dynamic, your whole application, your whole asset, your whole liabilities, your whole financial profile, and I can scan all of these lenders and find a match for you and for your family, and not just for today. We strategize and we plan for also your future, okay? Because you're not supposed to buy just one property. You're supposed to buy, your goal is to buy multiple properties. So that's a little bit about me, but I want to know who is in the room, right? I want to know, what is your goal date for your home ownership goal? When do you plan or intend or wish to become a homeowner? Drop it in the chat and let me know. November 2024. I love it. Love it. My goal is this year. I need a date, Vanita. I need a date. Pick a month, pick a year. This year, 2024, pick a month. And if you're here and you're a homeowner already, when is your intention to buy another property? 2026. Awesome. Awesome. Because I know I'm a believer, and the good book says if you haven't written the vision and made it plain, there's no way that you're going to be able to work towards it. And so this is why I ask, what is your goal date? Fall, September, latest next year. Okay. All right. Next January. All right. Good, good, good. So now we have something to work with, and then we will now work backwards, right? You have to set your intention. This is a big goal, all right? I say that it's easy, but it's easy with the information, but it's still a major milestone, right? So you have to be intentional with the work that you're doing, and it starts with a target date, all right? So thank you for sharing. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room. So the fact that you're here tells me that you don't listen to all the white noise out there. So congratulations to you again. But I know there's a lot of white noise out there, right? Interest rates are so high. It's very expensive. There's not enough properties available for everybody. There's not enough space to house all of our people. I understand all of that. But what I will also say is that even though we have experienced what we've experienced in the last 4 years, the real estate market has not stopped. Okay? It has not stopped. It slowed down a little bit. It shifted. It got very hot. It cooled down. It's done a lot in the last 4 years. But what it has not done is stopped. Okay? So the question usually is it a good time to buy? And so for all those reasons that I just mentioned, right? The market uncertainty, high prices, there's even been talk for the last 3 years that we are in a recession, or we're going into a recession, or we're near a recession. So many mitigating factors that can discourage you from wanting to enter into homeownership. But as I said to you, the real estate market has not stopped. So it's up to you to figure out how you're going to make your way into the mix and do what works for you and your family. All right. We do have to change our perspective, maybe. We do have to change maybe our goals and our intentions. We may even have to change our ideal property, our ideal location. But my short answer to this question is yes, it's a good time to buy. It's a good time to buy if you can afford to, because that's what the foundation is. Can you afford to purchase a property right now, or in the months to come, or in the dates that you've shared with me earlier, right? It has to make financial sense for you. This is just a quick slide that showed, based off of the last year and going into this year, the predictions. One of the predictions. There's so many different predictions. But we know that last year was kind of on the tail end of what was really happening in 2022, when inventory was super low, interest rates were super low, but there were so many qualified buyers that wanted to get into the market that shot up the housing prices because there was so much competition. And so now, come 2024, we're now kind of just settling in to what was happening a couple years ago. But what we see on this chart is that The activity had increased in early spring 2023, which is pretty typical for the real estate market. But as the year started to close, sales started to decrease, housing prices started to decrease, and partly because, if not mainly because, of the interest rates, right? The government had to step in and increase the rates because they wanted to slow the activity down, right? But what looking forward to 2024, we see that things are back on the incline. Interest rates are projected to start to decrease this year. And so because people have been waiting on the sidelines to get in, they know that we're approaching the spring market. They've actually started to jump the gun. Bidding wars have already started. And so we're here today because I want you to prepare yourself. I don't want you to miss out on an opportunity to position yourself to access property that you could purchase by you sitting back and just waiting or wondering if you could do it. All right. The market is going to still market and people are still going to buy homes. And I believe that you deserve to buy a home too. So going back to Bank of Canada, who did their utmost best to try to fix the problem that they created, but we're not going to go into all of that. Over the last three announcements, they had decided to pause the interest rate increases, right? And so this is what's helping to build or rebuild the confidence of the buyer market. They're thinking, okay, well, this is a sign that things are going to kind of get back to what we used to. What I will say is that I don't think we will ever see those 1% and 2% interest rates that we were seeing pre-COVID. I do believe that we'll probably get anywhere between mid fours, maybe high fours, right? But even that is still going to take a little bit of time to get there. The rates increase super fast, but they're going to come down a lot slower. But again, you want to time yourself, you want to prepare yourself, put what you need in place so that once the time is right for you, you're able to make the step. Okay. Going back to what I said, it always depends on you because I truly believe home ownership is personal, right? As I said, people are still buying homes today, despite the high interest rates, despite the higher than what we would call normal or higher than what we would like the housing prices to be. But they're finding different strategies to help themselves get into the market because there's one thing for sure, two things for certain. Real estate is going to always appreciate, especially in the type of market that we currently live in, right? And that's currently spreading out further out into the outskirts of the cities because of the core being at the price point that it is. So whether you decide you want to move within the next year, or if you say you want to move in the next 5 years, the housing prices are still going to appreciate. All right. And so just to kind of cover our bases, why in real estate, there are different ways that you can invest your money and have your money work for you. But I am a diehard real estate girly. And this is the reason. The main reason is because it's a tangible asset. Like you can see, feel, touch, smell it when you put your money into real estate, the right real estate, right? Unlike stocks or bonds or other things that are digital. I love digital, but it's not the same as a tangible asset that you can pass on to your children or you can upgrade from or you can leverage, right? And make money from it like on a monthly basis. Those are things that you can't get from some of the other investment opportunities. So I do encourage having diversity in your portfolio, investment portfolio, but I strongly believe that everyone should have some real estate at best possible, at least one property in their portfolio so that they can have their money working as securely as possible. Legacy. As a mom, as a daughter, I truly believe that real estate can really change the way that we position our children for the future. We've missed out on a lot of years, hundreds of years, I know. But now that we have the information, we can make it right. All right. Again, changing our perspective on what we want and get what we need will also help to move us in the right direction so that we can begin the process of creating that generational wealth by leveraging real estate. So my philosophy really is get in where you fit in. This diagram is just an example of the longer you wait, the more expensive the properties. And I don't even like to use the word expensive because if you currently own, you're leveraging off of that, right? Your property is going to appreciate and you can grow. So this is just an example that the longer you wait, the more opportunity you have to build equity, or the less opportunity you have to build equity. All right. Real estate has proven that over every 10 years, our value pretty much doubles. Okay. And again, it's because of the real estate market that we live in. The further you go out, the numbers may be a little bit different, but at this very least, they are going to increase. Okay. So get in where you fit in and let your money start working for you. And then you can re-strategize once your money starts to work for you. All right, so this is customized for first-time home buyers, right? So we are going to go over what qualifies you as a first-time home buyer. And so times have really changed because when I first purchased, what a first-time home buyer was only somebody who had never purchased a property before, but they've expounded on that. Now you can also qualify as a first-time home buyer if you have not owned a principal residence for the last 4 years prior to your application. So if you apply today, that means your last time you would have owned a property or your name was on a title would have had to have been 2019. If you sold a property before 2019, you now would be qualified for as a first-time home buyer status. And we'll go into what that even means. If you've owned a property before, or if you own a property with your spouse, if you've owned a property but not your spouse, then you can still qualify and reap the benefits as a first-time home buyer. Or if you are now a single parent who previously owned with a spouse but are no longer married, you essentially regain the status of first-time home buyer. So those last three, those never existed until over the last few years. And I think this is the government's way of showing that they're trying to help the real estate market. And, for some, it does help. Some of the incentives that are in place for first-time home buyers are the first home buyer's tax credit, right? And so what that is, once you do buy a house, when you're filing your taxes, you would have to advise your accountant or whomever is preparing your taxes that you did purchase a property, and it's a line item and you'll be eligible for a credit. The home buyers plan, this is where it allows you to access your RRSP savings, where you can pull up to a certain amount and use that as your down payment. And then in the recent years, they've came up with a program called the First Time Home Buyer Incentive, where essentially the government, comes in as a partner to help you purchase a property. All right. And we will go into a breakdown. So the home buyer's tax credit up until December 2022, the claim was only a $5,000 non-refundable tax credit. They've since doubled that, and now it will help you to get a savings of about up to $1,500. All right. Of course, it is a factor. What factors in is all of your other income and all of your other expenses. But once you've purchased as a first-time home buyer, you do get to potentially access this credit. Again, the home buyers plan, the HBP. If you have RRSPs, you've been investing, you can withdraw up to 35,000 per person. So if it's you and a partner, you both can withdraw up to 35,000. And what that means is you can take it out tax-free. And then once you've purchased the property, you've provided your proof that you've purchased the property, you've closed on the property. After you've closed the property, within the second year after your ownership is when you would start to now repay incrementally because of it. You did, Vanita? Yay. I love that. Thank you. I love when my attendees take, my advice. And great job, Vanita. All right. So when you're borrowing the money from yourself and you do have to repay it to your RSP because your RSP is designed for your retirement income. If you decide that you aren't able to pay it back, or you just decide you don't want to pay it back, you don't want to pay yourself back, that is okay too. However, what will happen is that money that you withdrew, whether it's 35,000 or 5,000, that would be added to your income in that year, and then you would be taxed on it. Okay, so it would add to your taxable income, and then you may end up, depending on where you are, you may end up having to repay in taxes. So this first-time home buyer incentive program is a variation of a program that was out years ago, called an affordable homeownership program, where the government, the municipal government, would assist you in the down payment, and you didn't necessarily have to pay it back, and you weren't, it was structured a little differently. So this time around, they've come out with, it's directly from the government, the federal government, where they will allow you to purchase a property, but you are required to have 5% minimum. So if you're buying a resale property, you would have to have 5%, and they will match your 5%, and then giving you a total of 10% as a down payment. What this intention is to help you expedite your homeownership goal, right? So if you had to wait to save another 5%, it may take you a few years. But if the government gave you the extra 5% and allowed you to purchase with them, then you would get into your home sooner, and it would also reduce your carrying costs. What it does is they would secure that 25,000, using the example on the slide. They would secure that 25,000 as a non-repayable loan towards the property, but then you would have to repay it at the time of sale, or if you have the property for 25 years, and you would have to pay back based on the current value of the property. How do you access that? So we would definitely go through, yes, we do. So we would pre-qualify you, right? Make sure that you assess, because they do have a little qualification criteria separate from our own. And so once we do the calculations, determine what you're eligible for, right? Then we would submit, and we're submitting to the lender. The lender would underwrite it as a first-time home buyer incentive application. So it's directly through the broker, but also through the lender.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Can
welcome.
the house price be more than 500?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. But again, it's still dependent on what you can qualify for. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
They also give you the option to purchase as a new construction property as well. And if it is new construction, they will give you up to 10%, which would mean you would have 15% as a down payment towards that purchase. But the same rule applies. You wouldn't have to repay that 10%, but it would be secured on the loan, secured on the property until you decided to either sell, or you've had the property for 25 years, and then you would repay the 10% of whatever whatever the value is of the property at the time that you are paying them out. Okay. So it is an option. I will say that it's not a popular option, but it's definitely an option. All right. So what's next? Where do you start? You get pre-approved. And I want you to know that pre-approval is, it needs to be underwritten. When I say underwritten, if you're speaking to a broker, speaking to an agent, speaking to a bank, and they're not collecting your paperwork, like wads of paperwork, then, and they've given you a number, you can't necessarily trust that. You can't validate that, because we give approvals or pre-approvals or assessments based on documented income, documented credit, documented savings, because when we are submitting applications, this is what they ask for, and that's how they will approve you. So getting pre-approved and knowing what your eligibility is key, because it's going to not waste your time. It's not going to break your heart. It's not going to put you in a pickle where you're looking at things and wanting to make offers, and when you realize you can't afford it, it could just turn upside down, right? So making sure that you're getting a full evaluation of your documentation. It's going to give you exactly how much you can buy for. Meaning, if we say, yeah, you're roughly around 650, you're pre-approved for 650, doesn't mean go buy something for 750, because in the next slide, you'll see how we determine what that number is. It also protects you against interest rate changes. And of course, as we know, rates were frequently changing over the last few years. So if you do get a pre-approval, that is also considered a rate hold, meaning if the rates increase within that time window of 4 months, that you are protected. So whatever rate you have, you keep as long as you purchase within that time window. But also, if the rates were to decrease while your pre-approval is intact, then you have access, direct access to the lower rate that's being offered. Okay. It also allows for both you, your realtor, and of course your mortgage broker to be confident when you're out there shopping in the competitive market because you truly know what your budget is. All right. And also to just make note that a pre-approval is definitely not a final commitment. Although we assess your documentations, we also some lenders will underwrite and look at your documentation and say this is the number. Everything is still subject to approval because once it's a live deal, a live application, that's when they go through not only you and your criteria, but also the property to determine whether they will approve your application. Okay. But it's still a step that you should not skip. All right, so what does a lender require to determine your eligibility? I call it the ICE formula, but also I realize that it's the three pillars of the approval. This is what your approval is standing on. Your income, your credit, and your credit is a reflection of how much debt you have or not, or no debt you have, and your equity, which we refer to as your down payment. What is your investment in the transaction? And so the first thing the bank wants to know, the lender wants to know is how are you going to pay us for this money that you're asking for, right? And so, of course, we earn money differently. Many are employed, right? So if you're employed and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, it's pretty straightforward. Your job letter, your T4s, your pay stubs, tax assessments, something that the banks are very concerned with is if you owe CRA, because no matter how much money you put in the property and then the bank lends you money, if you owe CRA, they take precedence. So they always want to make sure that you don't owe the government any taxes. And if you do, you'll have to prove that it's been paid before they release their funding. If you are self-employed, there's a lot of entrepreneurs now, where I'm also an entrepreneur. Our income is mainly commissioned or cashed, right? Or we don't get tax deductions. And so what happens is once we file our taxes, we expense, you know, as much as we possibly can to save on taxes. And so when we trying to be qualified, we're qualified on the after-tax income, the net income. So if you make 100,000 gross, but you're only declaring 40,000, we will have to use the 40,000 to determine your eligibility. And in most cases, that won't get you what you want. But what I will say, the caveat to that is, as a broker, we have access to different lenders who have different type of lending guidelines that will give you access to mortgage products specifically for business for self and commissioned employees, right? With self-employed, you also have to provide a lot more documentation because your income isn't guaranteed. So they want to look back at where are you spending your money? Where is the money coming from? Where is it going? So you'll have to provide proof of your business bank statements, and then they'll do like an annualized assessment because of course you can make money this month and then not make money for the next 3 months, but you make solid money when you make it. But they just want to feel confident that, you have a consistent flow of money and will be able to repay their loan. And of course, as a self-employed, your business has to be legit, right? Your credit. So credit is it's a catch-22, all right? So many of us, like myself, we were introduced to credit without any education, right? And so a lot of us have found ourselves in um let's say a pickle. Let's be PG here, right? Found ourselves in pickle and we're having to rebuild ourselves. When you are looking at a mortgage is dependent on your ability to repay. So how have you managed the credit that you've had? So as I said before, the banks have a particular box that they are willing to lend to. So credit is kind of high up there. They do have an expectation to have good to great credit. And so in terms of credit score, they're looking at 680. They prefer 680 and above. 650, we do have lenders that will do 650, but that's their threshold. But we also have credit unions, we have trust companies who are not really credit focused, but are more equity focused and what your assets look like. So this is not the be all and end all, but it's definitely better for you to have the best credit that you can so that you can have access to the best products available. All right. Minimum 2 to 3 years of established credit history, credit trades, active trades. So old school thinking, like my parents are from the Caribbean and old school, they're like, they don't want owe nobody. Like they don't want to do credit. They want to do everything cash, but not in North America. You need credit to show how responsible you are with money. So you want to have at least 2 active trades that you're using. That could be credit cards, major credit cards, preferably, could be loans or car loans with a minimum limit of 5,000 across the board. Okay. If you've had the bad experience with your credit and you're in the rebuilding phase and you've had to go bankrupt or you've had a consumer proposal done, it doesn't rule you out. You just they have different requirements. So they would require a higher down payment, but also some form of reestablished credit. They want to see that, okay, something happened in your life. They understand life happens, but what have you done since then? All right. We also have alternative lenders who, as I mentioned, they don't really care about credit. They're looking at your overall picture, and will lend you based off of the entire deal, but it does come at a premium. The question is, there's a big spread between my Equifax score and TransUnion score. Which one will they look at? Borrowwell has one score for me and Credit Karma another. Right. So Borrowwell pulls their information from Equifax and Credit Karma pulls their information from TransUnion. And so they are two separate entities. They calculate the information differently, even though they calculate pretty much, or they receive the same information. The scores will never be the same. It's kind of like going to No Frills and going to Fortino's, right? They process their business or they handle their business differently. They'll have the same bread, but it's two different pricing, right? So it depends on the institution, but as a broker, we use the Equifax bureaus. And I believe the reason is because Equifax is usually a lower score because they hold the information a lot longer than TransUnion. And so that's what they want to see. They want to see the full breakdown of your credit history. Credit Karma pulls from TransUnion, and so that's what the difference is. Is a prepaid credit card okay after recently discharged proposal? A prepaid credit card does not rebuild your credit. If it's a secured credit card,
Yes, secured. Sorry, it's secured. It's my own money. Yeah.
okay. But is it reporting to the credit bureau?
Yes,
Okay. So yes, it definitely will help as long as you're using it
properly.
properly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
It will help. But it's also the starting point. So after I would say you've been discharged, if you've been discharged for a year, I know with most proposals, the derogatory history should be removed or updated at least to good standing. I would say after a year, apply for a second card or take out a second uh, secured card because you need to have 2 active trades that is helping you to rebuild.
Even with the 20% down?
Not with a 20% down, but it still looks best for you.
It looks better. Okay.
If
Okay.
you have 20% down, you still don't necessarily want to go to a B tier bank if
Beats.
you go to an A bank.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Something I do encourage everyone to do is check your credit frequently. As Vanita mentioned, there's Borrowwell and there's Credit Karma. But though I want you to know that those reporting agencies don't have 100% accurate information. It's sometimes dated, and Equifax and TransUnion legally cannot release all of your information to them, even though it looks like everything is there. But I would recommend that you go directly to the source. Equifax directly. You can get a free report from them. There's also there's been changes with regulation where Equifax can give you a free report that includes the last 2 years of your payment history as well as your credit score in your report, and you can get that monthly. I will at the when we finish, I will drop the link in the chat, and if you can use that to access it. Okay, so lead with lead with Equifax, but also go directly to TransUnion. All right, the 5 C's of credit. This is like the unspoken um assessment process that the lenders use when they are reviewing your credit. And so when they're looking at your credit, they're factoring all these criterias in what your future credit worthiness could look like, right? So aside from the property, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, that they do factor in the property, right? They want to make sure that the security that they're using is going to be able to, if they need to, give them back the money that they invested. But they're of course looking at your score, they're looking at your credit history. They are looking if you did have issues in the past, what was the reason and what have you done to reestablish yourself from there? Your capacity. Are you living off of your debt? Are you living off of debt? Are you using your credit to maintain you, right? A lot of times we have, various credit cards, which is okay, but if they are maxed out when you're applying, lenders may believe that you may be at capacity. They always think in a proactive manner as, okay, she's working, she has good payment history, but her debts are maxed out. If for any reason she's not able to work, he's not able to work, the first thing that they're not going to be able to pay is probably the mortgage. That's what they're thinking, right? Even if that's not the case. So their capacity, so keeping your debts low is something that they prefer. Capital, of course, you do have to have your own form of investment, and that via your down payment. The minimum allowed is 5% of, and that's in another slide, 5% of up to 500,000. So that has to come from a reliable source, ideally your own savings. It can be gifted, but we also have to provide proof of that. And of course, on a whole, right? They look at all of your assets, all of the details on your application, and that speaks to them about your credit, your character, and how you handle your business. Okay. And so just a few tips on, how to build or rebuild or maintain your credit. Always pay before the due date because you want to give the system enough time for your payments to register. If possible, make extra payments before the statement date because the statement date, which is reflected on the bill that you get, if you get it digitally or in the mail, the statement date is the day that your bill is printed. Your credit card statement is printed. And so that is usually the date that it gets reported to the bureau. So the lower your balance is that date, the better it is for your report, for your score or your credit report when you do pull it. Okay. Keeping your balances low, 30% or lower. If you have $1,000 credit card, you want to try your best to not exceed $300, right? And just continue to use it and pay it, use it and pay it. Again, minimum 2 years and 2 active credit accounts. I always prefer major credit cards, mainly because the interest rates, they're high, but they're lower than some of these finance companies that are out there, like ridiculously lower. Be mindful of any unused accounts that you have. If you're not using them, I don't encourage canceling them because it will affect your history, but you also want to monitor them if they do have annual fees and things like that. Or switch it. Like, don't cancel if you don't have to. Apply for credit only when you need it, okay? Because what happens is if you just go on and apply for credit just to see if you can get it, there may come a time when you actually need it, i.e. when you're trying to purchase, and again, you may be at your capacity, there may be things on there that you don't know, and it may impact you. So only apply for credit when you need it. Because something also happens is that when we have too much credit available, I believe that life was always going to life, and there will find a reason for you to use that credit. And then you'll have all this debt that also counteracts what you're actually trying to do. So that's a whole nother webinar, but I'm just saying apply for only when you need it. I mentioned avoid closing or canceling credit cards because it does impact the history portion of your credit reporting. And most importantly, when you are preparing to get a mortgage, please avoid co-signing for others. So co-signing vehicles, co-signing personal loans, because what happens is, one, you put yourself at risk if that person is not able to pay, or two, whatever debts that you have co-signed for, even if you're just doing it as a favor and they're making the payments, it's not actually coming out of your account. We have to factor in that full payment into your application, and that can impact your eligibility, right? So if it's a car, we know car payments are ridiculous right now, 7, 8, I've even seen $900. I'm like, right? We have to factor that in your account, factor that in your application. And just to give you an idea, for every $450 of monthly repayment that's reflected on your credit bureau, that's equivalent to about $100,000 of mortgage money. So if you don't want to have other people's payments on your bureau to impact your eligibility. All right.
Can you
Um,
repeat that again? I
for
missed it. Yeah.
Okay, so for every 400, so let's say $450 of repayment on
Mm-hmm.
your credit, that's
Yeah.
equivalent to $100,000 in mortgage money.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then so like the equity, your investment, down payment, they're looking at where your down payment is coming from. So traditionally, it can be in your savings account, it can be your high interest account, it can be in an investment. What it can't be is a podna or a susu or underneath your mattress or in your drawer. It needs to be documented investment, okay? Bank does not do well with money that is not traceable or doesn't show any history, all right? So if you are in a podna, if you are doing susu, you'll also have to figure out a way how to strategically deposit those funds into your account, and not in lump sum. Anything over 1,000, the bank will raise their eyes and want to know where that's coming from if it's outside of a paycheck. Okay. You can get your down payment as a gift from a immediate family member. Immediate meaning mom, dad. I've had to beg for a grandparent, but mom, dad, brother, sister. Okay. They typically don't like any type of borrowed unless it can be documented. And so if somebody is giving you a gift, be prepared that they will also have to provide their banking statements to prove that the money is coming from their account. Okay. I saw a message. My son invests in Bitcoin and is gifting me. Is that okay? The best thing to do is have it invested, have it converted into your bank account and be there for 90 days. Banks are steering away from the Bitcoin.
Okay, 90 days. Okay. I heard I'm gonna be taxed on it too.
Yeah, anything outside of a non-taxable investment, the government is going to tax you on it.
Okay. I better open a tax-free savings account.
Absolutely. Hold on.
Okay. Okay.
We'll talk about the end. We'll talk about the end. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Other forms of acceptable down payment are your RSPs, of course, the buyer's plan. Everything just has to be documented. Everything has to be documented. Everything has to be documented. So wherever it's coming from, know that it has to funnel through some form of an account. They also allow borrow down payment. So if you are borrowing, I'd rather we be strategic in how we present that. But if you are borrowing, i.e., maybe from a line of credit or a credit card, which is again something I don't encourage, one, you'll have to pay interest on it. Two, we have to now factor that in as a repayment in your liabilities. So that borrowed money it may get you into the home, but it may get you less of a home because it's an increased debt. Okay. But it is possible. All right, so going into the down payment structure, as I mentioned earlier, the minimum down payment allowed is 5%, but that is now only up to a property that is 500,000. Any property that's over 500,000, you're still able to put 5%, but 5% of the first 500, and then anything over 500, you'll have to pay 10% of the difference up until just under $1 million. So if the property is 700,000, then you'll have to put 25,000 for the first 500, which is 5%, and then 10% of the 200. So in total, your minimum down payment would be 45,000. Okay. Any property that you're purchasing that is $1 million or over, it's automatically a 20% requirement, 20% down payment. So 1,200,000 would be your down payment. And this pertaining to owner occupied properties. If you're buying an investment property, it's automatically a 20% down payment requirement. Okay. Some self-employed would also require 20% depending on the lender. But if it's through traditional lenders or if we're looking through a self-employment program, the minimum may be 10% down payment. Okay. All right. So how do we determine what your purchase power is? So we use, well, let me just say, I used to use a calculator. I actually used to use pencil and paper when I first got into the industry, but I will boldly say that I don't do that anymore. We have a system that does it for us. And so we input all your information, your income, the debt, your credit debt, everything that's reflected on your credit bureau in terms of payments, plus the cost of the home, right? And when we plug that in, um, the debt service ratio cannot exceed 39%, right? And your total debt, meaning all of the costs of the home plus any other expenses that you have, cannot exceed 44%. So you may have your eye on a home that is 750,000, but because of your debt servicing, we may have to, one, increase your down payment. We may have to add somebody to the application that will add income, or we'd have to focus on some debt. Maybe like there's different things you'd have to do, but it has to fit within these debt servicing ratios, or the lender will not lend. If we are looking at non-traditional lenders, so like trust companies, credit unions, they have a little bit more wiggle room. They have a little bit more grace in terms of their debt servicing. But of course, everything comes with a premium. But I give this because my goal is to get you in the best available products, the most cost efficient as well. So knowing that we factor in all these things, keeping your debts as low as possible and boosting your income as much as possible will be helpful. But if you don't even want to go through me and you just want to have an idea of where you are today, you can use this little shortcut qualifier and just use your gross annual income and multiply it by 4.5, and that will give you the amount of mortgage you could qualify for. An estimate, sorry, let me stand corrected. An estimate of how much mortgage. It doesn't factor in if you have credit and stuff like that. So if you make 100,000, you multiply that by 4.5, that's about 450,000. If you have $100,000 worth of down payment, let's say you could probably purchase a property about 550. Okay. But if you have $50,000 worth of debt, we might have to reduce that. But just to give you an idea of what your number looks like, you can do this shortcut. All right, so I pulled up a couple examples just to give you a feel of what's actually happening out there. This is a condo property that is currently available in Mississauga. It's a 2-bedroom plus condo listed for just under 700,000, so I just rounded it. The annual taxes, property taxes, are 2,000 and call it $2,200. This property does also have a condo maintenance fee, which is 1,051. And so factoring a 10% down payment amortized over 25 years and using the 5-year fixed rate plus what's called a stress test. I didn't even get into that, but a stress test is what has literally been our saving grace through this last few years of interest rates and so forth. So a few years ago, the government implemented called several years ago, called what's called the stress test. And the reason for doing that is because interest rates had been so low for so long, they began to get concerned that people were overextending themselves with debt. And so what they wanted to do is to create a little bit of a buffer between what someone is actually qualified for and what they purchase for. So the stress test, per, the, the stress test requires us to bump up the interest rate in your qualifications. So currently interest rates are about 5.5 and a half. We have to add 2% to that. So making it the qualifying rate at 7.49 to determine what your budget is. We can't qualify you at what the going rate is because, again, if rates were to move like they did, then you would be overextended very quickly. All right. So this property, the mortgage payment, excluding the property tax, I didn't add that part in, but the mortgage payment for this purchase would be $3,964.68. Okay. And that's in Mississauga, which is obviously a premium area. I think this is close to the square one. And so, of course, everything is going to be premium in Mississauga.
Does that rule apply with the 20% down, the stress test?
It, yes, if you're going through traditional lenders, yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
non-traditional, right? Credit unions are the only ones that don't have to use the stress test.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So this property is a freehold property, detached property in Brampton, 3-bedroom, currently listed at just under 900,000. Property taxes are a little bit higher, but you're getting the full home. The mortgage payment on this would be $5,100. And I didn't mention on the last one, but the minimum requirement. So this would be one of those where the first 500,000 is 25%, and then the difference. So the minimum down payment on this property would be 74,000, and the approximate household income to qualify for this property would be about 200,000. And so that 200,000 can come from up to 4 people on one application. So I know when somebody said, "Oh my God, 200,000." Yeah, it doesn't have to be one person, but if you're purchasing as a family or as a, partnership, it's everyone's income added together. Okay? And again, this is based off a 10% down payment. All right. So kind of gone through what the cost of the home is. How do we determine what you're eligible for? Something that many people forget when purchasing a property is that it's not just about just the down payment. All right. There's other costs that will be required to be covered throughout the transaction. Upfront deposit. So if you are looking at a property, if it's a resale and you like the property, you want to make an offer, the vendor is going to require you to make a serious offer with money. Okay. So you'll need to have some money available up front. We encourage that all purchases get an inspection because an inspector is going to come in and look in all the nooks and crannies. As you noticed in this property, you see from the outside, it looks a little bit dated, but when you look in the kitchen, they just did they redid their kitchen. So it looks and it shows well, but we can't see under the covers. We can't see if the plumbing is done properly. We can't see if there's any mold in the bathroom. An inspector is going to come in and do all of those assessments to make sure that what you see is what you're actually getting. And if there is something that comes up, then you can go back to negotiating table. Appraisal. More and more, again, with the changes in the price values, values going up, values coming down, an appraisal sometimes is required. And what that basically does, it just validates that the price that you have agreed to pay is the actual market value of the property. Okay. And so an appraisal is something that it's for the bank to reassure them, but you would be required to pay that. You will require a lawyer, and of course, their job entails a lot of little administrative things. So checking the title, making sure that the money there's nothing secured against the property that you don't know about, that there's title insurance, there's protecting making sure that there's fire insurance to protect the investment. Land transfer tax, that's something that the bank sorry, the government charges because of they want a piece of everything, right? Something I also mentioned that I didn't mention is that as a first-time home buyer, you are eligible for a land transfer tax credit of up to $4,000. And so depending on the home that you purchase, right? Like on the condo property that we looked at, just a guesstimate, the land transfer tax could be around 3,500, right? And so because you're eligible for a credit up to 4,000, you wouldn't be required to pay any of that. But on the detached home, the land transfer tax can be about 6,000. And so you would get a credit of up to 4,000, but you would have to pay the difference. So the lawyer handles all of that. They handle the taxes, they make sure that utilities are transferred over. Um, those are all included in what we call the closing costs, right? And so that's in it, as I said, in addition to your down payment, even after not owning for 4 years, the land, that's the only exception with the first time home buyer. You're only eligible for the land transfer tax credit one time. So all of the other perks you have access to except for that one. So if you did buy again, even though you're qualifying for the other perks, you're using your RSPs or you're getting the tax credit, the land transfer tax credit is not given a second time. But if you bought with a spouse, they would get their portion. They would get their credit. All right. So I think just based off this, I do want you to know that when you are making your plan, that of course you have to leave a buffer because of course there's moving costs, there's all of these other things that in addition to the down payment that you want to factor. And I know I'm just giving you a general thing, but of course it's very specific to you, your eligibility, and what the cost of the property is. Okay. All right. And so everything that I covered today is from the mortgage aspect, the mortgage lending aspect. How much is it to hold a house these days? What do you mean hold?
The money that you have to give them when you like a
Oh,
place.
the deposit?
Yeah.
Depending on the price, depending on the competition, at
Mm-hmm.
very least $5,000.
Okay. Okay.
At the very least. I've had clients have had to put 25.
Right.
Yeah. So it depends on, what's happening in the market at the time.
Like bidding wars, right?
Yeah. If there's a lot of interest, they're going to want whoever puts their best foot forward. But at the very minimum, $5,000.
Okay.
And you will have to have that within 24 hours of making your offer.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, as I said, everything that I've shared is from the standpoint from where you should be starting your journey. Once you decide you want to purchase a property, the first stop you should make is with a finance person. You got to know the numbers because even if you know a realtor and they're gung ho ready to assist with you, they want to know what your budget is, right? So this is the first stop, making sure that you understand the qualifying process, you understand your budget, you understand making sure that your credit is in check. But it is a team effort. It's not just the mortgage broker. All right. Who do you need on your team? Of course, starts with me. All right. But of course, you would want to have a real estate agent. And as a buyer, I want you to know that it is a free of cost for you to use one. So if you're in a neighborhood and you see that there's an open house and there's a listing agent or the agent that is selling the home on the property and says, "Oh, do you have a realtor?" And you say no, and they want to represent you also, that's not always the best option to go with, mainly because they have a fiduciary duty to take care of the interest of the person whom they're selling the home for. So you want to have your own representation because your buyer agent, as a buyer, they're going to look after you and they're going to protect your interests versus you using somebody who is doing both ends. Okay. I mentioned earlier that you would need a property inspector. And so that usually would come as a referral from your realtor. We usually have like a team of different people, but it's not somebody you would necessarily have to find yourself, but you would know that it's a part of the process. I mentioned about the real estate lawyer. A real estate lawyer is required hands down because one, they protect your interests, they protect the lender's interest, but they also protect the seller's interest. Okay. When the lender is issuing their money, their $1 million, they're not sending it to you for you to bring it across the street to the blue bank. They're going to send it to the lawyer. So you will have to have a real estate lawyer that handles all of not only the administrative part, but also the financial part. And I think what the most important piece of this team is having a financial coach or an advisor, because your real estate purchase should only be just a piece of your legacy plan. All right. You want to make sure that all of your investments are working together and nothing is working against each other. So having somebody that can advise you on before you get into it, while you're into it, when you're ready to make a change, because again, ownership is just one piece of the financial future. It's one I would maybe wheel, you could say, right? But having somebody that can look at your entire financial portfolio and advise you to make sure that you are making the right choices as you are building your legacy. All right. So, in closing, I know I've said a lot. It was a lot. I know I didn't get much questions, but in closing, I just want to encourage you that if homeownership is definitely something that is on your wish list, on your goal list, on your target list, don't wait beyond what you need to wait, right? Buy real estate and wait. And again, that goes by again to what I said about getting in where you fit in. So you may want to live in Peel region, Durham region, Hamilton, what is that called? Halton. Out there you may, but your budget may not allow for that. Buy where you can and let your money start working for you. And then you can re-strategize in a year or 2 years after your money has an opportunity to grow. Don't wait to buy. Interest rates are about to move again. And what's going to happen is there is going to be some hot activity, not only in the hot areas like the GTA, but because most people are starting to move on the outskirts are also getting very competitive as well too. So what I would encourage you to do is to book a call with me, and so that we can go over where you currently are and maybe put some things in place. I can give you some ideas on what you need to do. You can go ahead and scan the QR code that's going to give you directly to my calendar. You can book a time. I would ask if you just put in the notes to let me know that you were on the webinar so I can make sure that I can address you accordingly. But yeah, book appointment. Let's have a conversation and see where you're at and what we can do to help you move to the next step. All right. But if you're here and you know that I'm nowhere ready to do this, it's just a wish. Um, I'm super excited to announce that you guys have first dibs, well, second dibs, actually. My newsletter got it. I am going to be launching the 4-week financial boot camp. I have been coaching moms, women, for the last year and a half on a one-on-one basis and helping them to get clear on their finances. They have this burning desire to become a homeowner, and their finances are all over the place. And so what we've been doing is just helping them to get better management of their money, because their money is really going to be the defining factor whether you move ahead or you don't. Okay. If you master your money, then you'll be able to get into a home of your choice. And so I'm going to drop, oh, geez, where is it? I thought I was going to drop. I'm going to drop the wait list in a second when I find it. If that is something that you are interested in, feel free to fill out the form and I will gladly have a conversation with you and see how I can help you to move forward. All right. All right. And last but not least, if we are not connected on social media, please do follow me. And then send me a DM and let me know who you are, because I do sometimes don't follow everybody back who follows me. You can find me at Mortgages for Mom on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm mainly on Instagram, so if you want to have a conversation, that's where we'll have it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead, turn your mic off, and let's talk about it.